And we're back. You're listening to Live from the Heartland this Saturday morning. It's WLUW 88.7 FM, Loyola University's community radio station. I'm Lisa Smith, and we've been talking to local indie filmmakers that you should probably know about. Our next guest is Rujanee Muhakanjana. Good morning.
Good morning.
And also Mark Moore.
Good morning.
You're here to talk about your film, which is called Man and His Erections. Now, it's a kind of a wonderful, clever title, and I screened it, or viewed it, and found it very interesting. You in the film, you sort of ask the question, why does man build tall buildings? And you sort of take a playful and serious approach to that question. Right. How did you come to that idea? Was it were you just having fun with it? Or are you seriously interested in architecture or what?
My particular interest in architecture, as my background, I think that has influenced the most of my subject for this film. I actually realized that the question relating to man and the structure, why do men build tall buildings, always around for so many years. Like, it's not a new subject, but not a lot of people explore that question deep enough. But we also have another personal stories about
the title.
About the title.
You have personal stories about the title?
Well, we were both walking down Columbus Drive, crossing over the river, and we were looking at the Trump Tower, and the new building is going up. And then we're pretty excited also about Santiago Calatrava with the Chicago Spire. So as we're crossing over there, Rujanee asked, why is it, do you think, that man builds these tall buildings? And as we were crossing over, I thought about the title. I was thinking, well, man and his erections.
Absolutely.
And why we have to continue to build taller, higher, larger, bigger buildings. This quest.
Well, but I think it's interesting, but you do, obviously back in the Renaissance and the Greek era, and you do cover those eras, but they weren't building tall. Of course, they couldn't. You're right. During the Renaissance, they did start getting the big spires and the vaulting
towers everywhere in the city in Italy. Yes.
Right. Now, in your film, there's referenced architecture in New York and London and Dubai, and also some of Frank Lloyd's Wright's work, who I don't think is really known for skyscrapers, but you don't show them. Was that a conscious choice that you wanted to focus on Chicago architecture, or?
Yes, pretty much. We use his structure, his buildings, also including with Mile High. I don't know if you know about Mile.
No, I'm not familiar with that one.
It's a skyscraper by Frank Lloyd Wright.
It was built?
It wasn't built, but it was planned to be built. It was his fantasy imagination about Chicago.
That's interesting. Yes. Yeah, you don't think of Frank Lloyd Wright and think skyscraper. Mm-hmm. So in the film, this was one of my favorite parts. Actually, let's back up a little bit. You mentioned in the film that buildings that are, or someone does, one of your interviewees, one of the architects, I believe, mentions that buildings that are built in the desert, say Dubai, where the value of the land isn't really relevant to the height. That is to say, the land isn't that valuable. That's not why they're going vertical. Those buildings really are they're symbols of power and prestige. We might say they're phallic, but they're definitely not about real estate values. Can you comment on that?
I think we want to explore more about the male's ego aspect of why go back to the same question, why do men build tall buildings? And in the city, such as the city of Chicago or anywhere that have reasons to build tall and dense, It's always have the reasons, and when it reaches a certain height, it kind of doesn't make sense to actually.
From an economic point of view.
Economic point of view, it's not going to be.
It's about something else.
Right.
It's not about the money.
Prestige,
It's definitely
standing out, it's kind of the saliency of in the city, showing yourself.
As an emerging power. Yeah.
Now, you've got your documentaries. Our overarching theme is about the sort of the phallic nature of so much of modern architecture. You've got interviews with anthropologists, architects, psychotherapists. Mark Moore here.
Yes.
You sort of interlace that with a story about a porn star who's having problems with erectile dysfunction, which is pretty amusing. But now, how does that function or not function in your film? That is to say, obviously, he's not functioning. Small joke.
Well, basically, our subjects for this, the film is just to explore the interconnection between inside and outside. And we try
it's not just about tall.
Right. And the outside here represents in 3 different examples. Like we have human evolution as human evolving or evolved and then start to erect, stand straight up. We also use the example of the architecture where the exterior and the function inside of the interior spaces. Also the sexuality, the male sexuality. The erections, experience of the erections, and also the psychology behind that.
What's going on with...
Right. So,
so in your interviews with anthropologists and psychotherapists about... I mean, you do have a psychotherapist who talks about Freud, and I think a lot of Freud has been debunked, but there is a lot of that's I think still in, popularly accepted, and one of which is that a lot of things are phallic symbols. I mean, I know a lot of women, and I think you did find that a lot of the women, that most of the people who commented in your film said that it was more women who thought about this than men. Mm-hmm. That like elongated cars or very tall, buildings like the new Calatrava that's going up. That some people have said looks like a D word. That they're phallic, but that men don't necessarily see that.
Right.
But do you buy the Freudian, Mark? Do you buy the Freudian interpretation?
I actually do.
About why man builds tall buildings?
I mean, I think it kind of manifests on kind of all levels, and I would say architecture is part of that. The other psychologist is in the film. He talked about Frank Lloyd Wright.
Right.
And he had kind of a conflict, I think, with one of his cousins who was very critical of him. And at that time, he built a building in Oklahoma. He had planned to build something more taller and larger. But at the time, he built something kind of more like a squat building and protective, unattractive. So maybe something was going on with him also kind of psychologically where he was
undergoing all this criticism and felt
right.
not so powerful as he normally and expansive as he normally might, creatively and personally.
Exactly.
Interesting.